shield. A man and his wife are walking through a museum when the man sees a shield on the wall. "Look at that," he says. "Isn't that remarkable?" The two of them walk a little closer. "What's so remarkable about it?" says his wife. "Well, the workmanship," says the man. "It's exquisite." "It's just a shield," says his wife. "It's a big hunk of metal. That's not even anything painted on it." "Well, I think it's nice," the man says after a while. But there isn't really much more to say. That evening the man and his wife go to dinner at a friend's house. "You should have seen this shield," the man says. "Oh," says the friend, "tell me about it." "There's nothing to tell," the wife says. "It was just a shield." "I've always wanted to be a knight," says the man. "It seems like it would be so much fun." "Fun," says his wife. "It's a good way to get killed." "Not with a shield like that," says the man. And the friend at least laughs along with him. The man has a hard time concentrating on the road on the way back home from dinner. He has had too much to drink, and in his mind he is jousting with another knight on horseback. He is doing very well. He is winning. "Let's stop by the museum," he says to his wife. "What?" his wife says. "Are you kidding?" But the man is not kidding. He drives to the museum and he parks across the street from it. "You can't be serious," says his wife. "You're going to get arrested." "No, I won't," says the man. "Do you have any faith?" The man heads toward the museum. His wife stays in the car. Inside the museum is dark and very still. The man makes his way down the long rows of artifacts. He keeps an eye out for guards, but none seems to be around. Finally, he stops before the shield. "There you are," the man says, and lowers it from the wall. In the gray light of the darkened museum, the man becomes aware of something strange. There is actually a figure painted on the shield, painted there almost transparently. It is a horse, a white-winged horse. The man holds the shield up to admire it. Then he slides it down onto his arm and mimes a sword fight across the museum floor. The man fights and fights and fights and fights, and there he fights some more. And then he fights just a little more, and then he takes a break, and then he fights some more, and then he fights and fights a little more. Finally, after hours and hours, the man is completely spent. He is dripping with sweat and his muscles ache. "Thank you, shield," the man says. "I'll see you again sometime." And he puts it back up on the wall and goes out to the car. That night the man lies in bed with his wife. "I can't believe you did that," she said. "You jeopardized everything we have." "Everything," the man says. "Like what?" "Your freedom, our money, our reputation," says his wife. "You would have lost your job if you had been caught." "My job," says the man, making a noise of disgust. "What exactly are you trying to do?" says his wife. "Trying to do?" the man says. "I'm not trying to do anything. I just like the shield, that's all." The next day the man goes back to the museum again. It is during business hours, so the place is very crowded. It takes the man quite some time to elbow his way through all the people down the hall to medieval arms. And then when he gets there, he finds something terrible. The shield, his shield, is no longer there. In its place on the wall hangs only a sword. The man stands in silence and stares at it. "Where is the shield that was hanging there yesterday?" the man says to the guard on duty. "What shield?" says the guard. "The sword's been hanging there for as long as I can remember." The man looks back in confusion to the sword. "The sword is not the shield, any way you look at it." "Can I touch it?" he says. "If you want to go to jail," says the guard. "It's your choice, doesn't matter much to me." The man stands and stands there, and then suddenly he lunges. The fight lasts a long time. With the sword, the man is invincible. The guard has a gun, but really can't use it. The man swings the sword around in a protective circle. "I just want the shield," the man yells. "Just give me the shield and I'll go." That night the man sits in jail. His wife is supposed to bail him out, but she didn't. The man sits there and frowns. Then he hears someone humming. The old man sits beside him on the bench. "Hello," says the old man. "Good evening," says the man. "What did they get you for?" "Vagrancy," the old man said. "That's nothing too exciting. What about you? You don't look like much of a lawbreaker." "Well," the man says, "I had an altercation at the museum." "Ah," the old man says. "The shield?" "You know it?" says the man. His eyes go very wide. "Well, of course," the old man says. "Doesn't everyone?" The man doesn't know where to start with the question, but it turns out the old man knows nothing. "It's the drink," the old man says. "Really, I'm sorry. I just have a lot of memory problems." When the man goes out of jail, the wife drives him home. "Look," the man says, "I want a divorce." "You're not the only one," says his wife. "Let's do it. In fact, let's do it tomorrow." The proceedings are begun. The man moves out. He gets a small apartment on the cheap side of town. His stuff sits in boxes. He has an old chair from Goodwill. Luckily, the two never had children. The man goes to work every day as usual. He comes home, eats something, watches TV. Sometimes at night he goes out for a stroll. One night he goes by the museum. It is dark outside, of course, like it was when he broke in, but now the place appears heavily guarded. There is a fence and a guard with a big dog and gun. The man stares up at a window where he squeezed in. He thinks about that night in the silent museum hall, the night he spent with the shield. Those were the good times, the man remembers, the days when anything seemed possible. The man finds himself whistling on the way home. He doesn't know when it started or what the song is. It's a strange song, though familiar, and as he whistles it, it starts to remind him of something. It reminds him of a place he once went before, a place beautiful and very far away, and the remembrance of that place seems to spur him on, and suddenly he's picking up the pace. Suddenly he's jogging down the middle of the road, and then he breaks into a run, and then he's running as fast as he can. It feels like he's about to take off. By the time the man gets to the cheap side of town, he's never felt so good in his life, and he blows right by that dingy apartment and off into the wide open space. The Martian. A man and a woman go to visit a famous astronaut. "What was it like on the moon?" says the man. "Did you see any Martians?" says his wife. "It was nice," says the astronaut, answering them each in turn, and "No, ma'am, I did not see any Martians." "Humph," thinks his wife. "Well, what fun is that?" The three of them sit down to dinner. Halfway through the soup course, a Martian enters the room. It takes the astronaut's napkin and lays it across his lap. Then it turns around and walks out. "I thought you said you didn't see any Martians," says the woman. "Not on the moon," says the astronaut. "No." The woman excuses herself and goes into the kitchen. The Martian is busy cooking asparagus. "Do you need any help?" says the woman. "I'm pretty good in the kitchen." "No, thanks," says the Martian. "I'm doing okay. You enjoy your meal." "But I'd like to get to know you," says the woman. "It's not every day you meet a Martian." "I meet them all the time," the Martian says to her. "Yes, but well, you know what I mean," the woman says. The Martian busies itself with the asparagus. "Are you a man Martian or a woman Martian?" says the woman, with a degree of embarrassment. "We don't have those," says the Martian. "Why?" "Just wondering," says the woman. "I guess because you're cooking. Down here most women cook." "Your husband doesn't cook?" says the Martian. "Not really," says the woman. "No, but he eats, right?" says the Martian. "Yes," says the woman, "quite a bit." The Martian says nothing for some time. "I really need to get some work done here," it says. "That is, of course, if you don't mind." The woman returns to the table. Her husband is talking to the astronaut about stocks and bonds. "That's very interesting," says the astronaut. "Yes," says the woman's husband, "isn't it?" The rest of the meal is quite tasty. Afterward, the man and the woman and the astronaut enjoy a drink in the den. "Would you like to play pool?" says the astronaut. "Oh, I don't think so," says the man, glancing at his wife. "I think Sally wants to go home." "I don't mind," says his wife. "I'll just sit here and watch." The man and the astronaut play pool. Meanwhile, the woman slowly wanders around the room, looking at the pictures on the wall. She sees pictures of the astronaut flying through space, pictures of the astronaut with the president, pictures of the astronaut sitting by the pool. Nowhere is there one of him with the Martian. "Why do you think he has no pictures of the Martian in his house?" the woman says on the drive home. "I don't know," says her husband. "Maybe it doesn't like having its picture taken." "Why would that be?" says the woman. "I don't know," says the man. "I'm not a Martian." "No," says the woman, looking over. "No, I guess you're not." That night the woman has a dream. In the dream she is a big shiny rocket flying through space. There is a Martian outside her window, and it is trying to get in. The woman is pulling at the door, trying to open it, but somehow it seems to be stuck. An alarm bell is ringing and a red light is flashing. "You can't let the Martian in," the woman says, as she suddenly starts from her dream. Just then downstairs the doorbell rings. The woman goes downstairs and stands by the door. "Who is it?" she says, adjusting her robe. "It's me," says the Martian. "Let me in." The woman stands there for a minute, thinking. "It's very late," she finally says. "It is a little awkward." The Martian says nothing for some time. "Are you going to let me in?" it finally says, and the woman opens the door. The Martian moves into the guest room. It hangs up a picture of space on the wall. It asks for an alarm clock and a very warm blanket. Then it goes right to sleep. "How long do you think it'll stay?" the woman asks her husband. "I don't know," says her husband. "You invited it." "Me?" says the woman. "That's not true. I didn't." "Well, you didn't turn it away," he says, and goes off to the den. The woman watches the Martian while her husband is at work. The Martian wanders around the house, straightening things. It straightens photos, piles of books, pens and tables, napkins. It straightens everything. Then it starts to vacuum. "You don't have to do that," says the woman. The Martian stares at her and says nothing. "It's really not necessary," says the woman. The Martian simply vacuums on. In the evening the Martian makes dinner. "I know how to make dinner," says the woman, but the Martian ignores her and keeps on cooking. The woman gets some carrots from the fridge and neatly chops them up. She feels like she ought to be doing something. "How's that?" she finally says. "Need any carrots?" The Martian dumps them into the soup and carries on. The man and woman sit at the dinner table. The Martian brings his soup and wanders off. "The Martian is making me very nervous," says the woman. "I really wish it would go." "Did you tell it to?" says the man. "No," says the woman. "I don't know how." "How?" says the man. "You just say it." "I don't want to hurt its feelings," says the woman. "You know, I mean, after all, it is from Mars." She puts considerable emphasis on the word Mars. The man thinks for some time. "You want me to do it for you?" he says. "Yes," says the woman. "Would you mind?" That evening the man takes the Martian into the study and closes the door behind them. The woman listens at the wall, but she can't hear a thing. Finally the Martian emerges. It goes downstairs and starts to pack its things. It puts the alarm clock and a blanket in the hall and removes the picture of space from the wall. Then it moves toward the front door. "Goodbye, Martian," says the woman, hurrying after it. "I'm sorry for the way this has all worked out." The Martian turns and looks up at her. "It's okay," it says, "not to worry. If you ever in the neighborhood, stop by." And with that, the Martian lifts off the ground and gently whirs away into the night. "It wasn't really that bad, I guess," says the woman in the bed that night to her husband. "I think maybe I just overreacted." "Perhaps," says her husband, "perhaps. Who knows? It was fun while it lasted. Now we're on to the next thing," and he kisses her and rolls over and closes his eyes and sleeps. That night the woman has another dream. In this dream she is falling. It is some kind of awful pit, and she is falling into it. Then she hears a strange whirring noise, and something takes her in its arms. It lifts her up out of the dark and flies her high into the sky, and then puts her down atop a mountain overlooking an endless sea. "Is this Mars?" the woman thinks, looking out over the water. "This rolling blue sea, this is Mars?" In the morning the alarm clock wakens her with a start. She goes downstairs and makes a cup of tea. In the paper there is an article about the famous astronaut. There is a photo of him beside the Washington Monument. There is a smile on his face, and he is waving at the camera. A small, attenuated figure is by his side. "My Martian," says the woman, touching the tiny gray image with one finger. "My Martian," she says, "it's you." The little girl and the balloon. A little girl found a balloon lying in the street, and she cried and ran all the way home. "But Annie, what's wrong?" said the girl's mother. "It was just a balloon." Just a balloon. And Annie couldn't say what the problem was, or if she could, she just wouldn't say. That night the mother had a terrible dream. In the dream, Annie was a balloon. She floated up out of her bed and through the open window and away across the sky toward the moon. "Come back," yelled the mother. "Come back, Annie." But Annie didn't come back. She went on. But the next day the mother did not let Annie go out. "Why not?" said Annie. "Is it because of the balloon?" "Yes," said the mother. "Yes, in fact it is. The balloon is dangerous, and we must all stay inside." So Annie and her mother stayed inside. They stayed inside for a very long time. They had little tea parties and read books together. It was great fun, but it got dull after a while. "Can we go outside now?" said Annie one day. "I'm sure the balloon is gone now, don't you think?" But the mother shook her head very severely. "No," she said, "the balloon is not gone. The balloon, in fact, will never be gone. So we must all stay inside forever and ever. We must stay here until the very end of time. I'm sorry, dear, but it's for your own good." That night when Annie lay in bed, she thought about her friends at school. She thought about the little tree she used to pass every day on the way to piano lessons. "I don't want to stay inside forever," she said, and so she got out of bed. And she opened the window and she climbed onto the ledge and floated up and away. In the morning the mother found Annie's bedroom empty, and then she saw the window wide open. "Winnie," she cried. "Annie, come back! Annie, can you hear me? Please come home." But Annie didn't come back. She didn't even answer. In fact, there was no response at all, just a cool rustling breeze that swept the leaves from the trees, and in the distance a faint, expected pop. The poet. A man sits down and writes a poem. It is not a great poem, he knows, but still he has written it, and so it makes him feel proud. Everywhere he goes he recites it in his head. Then one day the man has a great idea. "I will send my poem off to be published," he says, and so he goes and buys an envelope and sends it on its way. Many weeks later the poem comes back. It has been rejected. The man is sad. "I knew it was not a great poem," he thinks to himself, "but still I thought it was pretty good." A moment later he becomes very angry. Who are they to say what's good and bad, he thinks. They probably never wrote a poem in their life, and so he decides to send his poem out again. The man sends the poem out many times, and every time it comes back rejected. This is crazy, the man thinks. The world is insane. What the H is wrong with these people? So the man decides to publish his poem himself. He takes it down to the corner store and makes 14,000 copies, and then he wanders all over the city handing them to people and taping them onto signposts, and sliding them under doors and folding them into paper airplanes and launching them off buildings. He does this for days and days and days and days and days, until finally all his copies are gone. Then he goes home and collapses on the couch. "I've done everything I can do," he thinks, and turns on the TV. The TV is full of news about the man, or rather news about his poem. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone. People on the street are being interviewed. "I think it is pretty good," one person says. "I think it is a pretty good poem." "It is not the best poem I have ever read," says another, "but it is free, and that is good for me." "I didn't like it," a third person says, "but then again I don't really like poetry." "Bah," says the man, and turns the TV off. Then there is a knock on the door. The man stands up and walks over and opens the door. There is a very pretty lady outside. "Are you the man who wrote that poem?" So the lady says to him. "I am," says the man. "Who are you?" I am a writer for a famous magazine, she says. I'd like to interview about your life and poem. Would that be okay? The interview lasts for quite some time. The man describes his childhood and his views on life and talks at length about his job and how much he dislikes it. So what's next, says the lady when he's done with it all. Next, says the man. What do you mean? Next, says the lady. Next is what I mean. You know, what are you going to write next? The man frowns. He hadn't thought of that. He hadn't thought about writing more. I don't know, he says. I haven't figured that out. Well, says the lady, one thing's for sure, you won't have to self-publish again. When the lady is gone, the man sits for a while thinking. Then he gets out a piece of paper and sharpens his pencil. He sits down and tries to write. He tries and tries and tries, but every single thing he writes is about the lady reporter. I'd love to go out with you, the lady says when he calls. When exactly do you have in mind? The man and the lady go out for drinks that night. The lady tells him all about her childhood and her views on life, and goes on at length about her job and how much she likes it. Have you decided what you're going to write next? She says when they go to the end of the night. Well, the man says, if you want me to be honest, I don't think I want to write anymore. The man and the lady spend lots of time together. The man asks her to marry him, and she says yes. They have a nice wedding and buy a little house and settle down in the suburbs and have kids. 14 years later, the man writes another poem. He does it in the TV room while the kids are at school. When it's done, the man reads it over. This one's even better, he says, and he smiles and locks it in a drawer. The Rope in the Sea. A boy meets a girl on the beach and instantly falls in love. Would you like to go for a walk? He says. Okay, says the girl. The two of them walk along the waterline. They talk together and laugh. What's that? The girl suddenly says. There's a rope leading up out of the water. The two walk over and stand beside it. The girl looks out at the sea. Where do you think it goes? She says. And what's at the end of it? I don't know, says the boy. Let's find out. He looks at her. She agrees. The boy and the girl start to pull the rope in. It's a very nice rope, says the girl. Yes, says the boy. It's a good material and it seems very strong. Together they pull the rope a long time. It begins to pile up on the shore, but as they pull it farther and farther in, they find it gets harder to pull. There must be something big at the end, the girl says. Do you think we should keep pulling? We've come this far, says the boy. We're so close, I think we should keep going. The boy and the girl strain and pull, and when the last few yards come in, they see why the pulling had become so hard. There's an immense canvas-wrapped object tied to the end. What is that? The girl says. I don't know, says the boy. The two move closer to the object. The boy bends down and unties the knotted rope. Then he peels back the canvas. Oh, God, says the girl. The boy stares down. Inside are two dead bodies, a man and a woman lying side by side, lying in each other's arms. They are bloated and white, and the fish have been eating them. I'm going to be sick, the girl says. What do we do now? Says a moment later. I don't know, says the boy. CPR, CPR, says the girl. They've been dead for days, maybe for weeks, maybe more. Have they? Says the boy, looking down at the bodies. He can't really tell. Maybe they have, he finally says. Maybe, I don't know. But still, he says, we can't leave them like this. Shouldn't we get the police or something? The police, says the girl, looking around. You really want to get involved in this? In the end, the two of them roll the bodies back down into the sea. They can't seem to tie the rope correctly, so the corpses float out separately one by one. Well, says the girl, wiping her hands, I guess that takes care of that. Yes, says the boy, looking over, I guess it does. And the girl says goodbye and wanders off. And the boy stands there and watches, and then he turns and walks away in the direction of his home. But that night the boy cannot sleep. In his mind he sees the two bodies drifting. And then in the wind he hears their voices, two drowning voices calling. They're alive, says the boy. I knew they were. I have to save them. And he runs. It is dark, but the great full moon overhead illuminates the beach. The boy strips off his clothes and wades in, then pushes out into the sea. He swims in the direction the bodies went. He swims for hours and hours. He searches and searches everywhere, but there is nothing, nowhere, anywhere. All he finds are endless waves, endless cold black waves, and he finds every wave is colder than the last that came. Please, says the boy, his teeth starting to chatter. Please just let me live to find them. And then up ahead he sees an arm in the dark, and he knows his prayers have been answered. He reaches out and finds a thin wrist. He takes hold. It's the woman he's found. He pulls her to him, ducks beneath and rises to buoy her up. And when he goes, there is a canvas spread out against the dark sky. It looms like a sea creature unfolding its wings, then it comes down all around them. The boy sinks beneath, the water crowds in, and as the rope coils and ties, the boy sees the body in his arms as the girl. He slips into the darkness of her eyes. The Knife Act. A woman and her friend are in a knife store. Hey, says the one, you ever see one of those shows where the guy throws the knives at the lady? Yeah, says her friend, and the lady doesn't get hurt? Yeah, says the one, we should do that. Okay, says the friend, okay if you want. So the two buy lots of knives and run off to go practice. Do you want to throw or catch, the woman says a moment later. Catch, says the friend. Both women laugh, and the friend goes to the wall, and the woman tentatively takes aim. Be careful, says the friend. I will, says the woman, and she rears back and starts to throw. The knife flies cleanly through the air and lands perfectly in the center of the friend's stomach. In the hospital, the friend is very angry. You're the one who wanted to catch, says the woman. Yeah, says the friend, but not with my body. I told you I was sorry, says the woman. A few months later, the friend is released. She calls up the woman on the phone. "Are you ready?" she says, "'cause this time it's my turn." "Ready," the woman's answer finally comes. The two of them meet at the practicing spot. The woman brings the bucket of knives. "Here you go," she says, handing it to the friend. "I'll go stand in front of the wall." The friend assumes the thrower's position and chooses the knife from the bucket. "This one looks sharp," she grins. "Very sharp. Let's hope it doesn't hurt too much." The friend squints her eyes and bends forward like a pitcher, then straightens up and goes into the windup. The knife hand comes up, the knife hand goes back, and then the knife hand comes forward. The blade flies out cleanly, whistling through the air, like an arrow toward the woman by the wall. It's just about to plunge into her heart when abruptly it disappears. "What?" says the woman. "Where did it go?" "I don't know," says the friend. "And I almost had you." The two stand in silence, looking around. "Do you think it'll come back?" the woman says. "It sure doesn't look like it," the friend finally says. "Well," says the woman, "what do we do now? Do you want to try a different knife?" They look at the bucket. All of the knives are gone. Says the friend, "this is strange." "Yes," says the woman, "I agree. And also, on top of that, I'm getting really tired of standing by the wall like this." "Well," says the friend, "let's do something else." "Like what?" says the woman. "A movie?" "I don't know," says the friend. "Anything really. This whole knife thing really got boring." So the two women link arms and slowly walk away, leaving the empty bucket behind. For a while the world is still and silent, and then off in the distance there's laughing. The fish in the teapot. A man finds a fish in his teapot. He says, "That's odd." He decides to transfer the fish to a bowl. He does and watches it for a while. "It seems like a good fish," he says to himself. "I just don't know how it got in the teapot." The man tells his friend about the fish in the teapot. "Someone must just be playing a joke on you," his friend says. "Who?" says the man. "And what kind of joke is that?" "I don't know," says his friend, "but what's the other explanation?" The man sits at home watching the fish, trying to figure out what's happened. "Who put you in my teapot?" he says to the fish. But the fish doesn't bother to answer. It just swims around the bowl looking for an exit. That night the man has a dream. In his dream, all his friends are leaving the house with teapots tucked under their arms. Apparently the man has hundreds of teapots and also hundreds of friends, for the dream seems to go on for hours and hours. "Good Lord," says the man, waking up. He goes into the kitchen and stares at his teapot. "Of course there is only one. I must be losing my mind," the man says. Then he looks at the bowl. The fish is gone. "What the H," says the man. He looks all around. He checks the counter on the floor, under the fridge. He goes into the dining room and searches there too. He checks the living room and the bedroom to be sure. Then he goes into the bathroom and checks the toilet and the tub. But the fish is gone, completely gone. "It's got to be one of my friends," the man says, "probably the same one who left the fish to begin with." He hunts around and finds his address book, puts it in his pocket, and goes out. The man goes to visit every friend he has. He pushes into their homes and stomps around. He interrogates them and the members of their families and peers into their closets and drawers. But he can find neither hide nor hair of his fish, and all of his friends are frowning. "You were never my friend to begin with," one says. "We don't like you," says another. "Please leave." When the man crosses off the last name in his book, still shy of one particular fish, he finds a policeman waiting outside. "You will have to come with me, sir," the policeman says. The man is taken to jail and thrown in a cell. "All I wanted was my fish," he says. "What fish is that?" says a prisoner beside him. "Oh, it doesn't matter," the man says. He sits there for hours and hours. He realizes it matters very much. When the man is released, he hurries on home and immediately looks in the kitchen. The fish is still gone. The teapot's still there. He looks inside it to be sure, but there's nothing. The man stands in the kitchen. He doesn't know what to do. He thinks about making some tea, but for some reason he just doesn't feel like it. "Perhaps I will buy a fish," he thinks. The man goes down to the neighborhood pet store. Inside he finds hundreds of fish. He walks up and down all the aisles. My God, he thinks, there must be thousands. He wanders to the pet store for what seems like hours, staring and staring into the tanks, but none of the fish he seems to sees seem right. None is the fish from his pot. Finally, the man decides to ask the lady sitting beside the counter. "In your teapot?" She frowns. "That's very strange. I don't know what kind of fish that would be. What kind of teapot do you have exactly?" The man hems and haws. He makes a tentative motion with his hands. "It's hard to describe," he says. The man and the woman go back to his house. They stand there in the kitchen looking down. Says the woman. "I still don't know. It is a nice teapot, though." The man and the woman sit at the table and drink tea from the man's best cups. And the man tells the woman about the weird things that have happened, and the woman listens, and then she tells him some back. "My cousin got his porch stolen one time," she says. "His whole porch?" says the man in wonder. "Yep," says the woman, and they drink their tea. Later they go out for supper. The girl in the storm. There was once a girl who was lost in a storm. She wandered this way and that, trying to find her way home. But the sky was too dark and the rain too fierce, and all the girl did was go in circles. Then suddenly there were arms around her, strong arms, good arms. And they picked the girl up and carried her away. When she woke, she was lying in bed. It was a warm bed, very warm, by a roaring fire. The blankets were soft and she was dry. She looked around the room. There were paintings on the walls. There was a hot cup of tea on the nightstand. "Hello," called the girl. "Hello, hello." A young man appeared in the doorway. He looked down at the girl with a kind, quiet smile. "Feel better?" he said, and she did. The girl stayed with the man for quite some long time, until she had all her strength back. "I guess it's time for me to go home," she said, and started to gather her clothes. But when she got to the door, she saw the rain was still falling. If anything, it was falling even harder. So she took off her clothes again and went back to bed, and lay in the man's arms a little longer. This went on for many, many years, and eventually the girl grew very old. Then one day she discovered on the wall by the door was a switch that turned the rain on and off. She stood there staring at the beautiful day outside, and then down at the simple little switch. She listened as the birds flew by the window, singing, and then she turned and went back to bed. In the night that night, the man woke up. "Did the rain stop?" he said. "I dreamt it did," and the girl put her arms around the man and held him tight. "It may have," she said, "but it's all right. The afterlife is what you leave behind." A man stockpiles belongings for the next life. He buys coats, jackets, hats, socks, shoes. He buys umbrellas and belts and pretty flowers and couches and sports cars and big urns made of gold. He lines his house with hundreds of boxes and coins, bullion, stamps, paper banknotes. The man buys everything he can think of could be of use, but the man buys everything he can. Then one day the man becomes ill, deathly ill. "Here it comes," he says, and he readies his belongings and lies down to die. I sure hope this works," he says. But as he's lying there, a woman comes to him. "Come with me a while," she says, and the man gets up and quietly goes with her and is never heard or seen from again. In the morning, the man's nurse arrives early, only to find her employer mysteriously caught. A funeral follows after some time, but as the man has no friends, they don't come. But at night, as the man's house stands empty, a breeze cracks a window and slips in. It glides over the couches, the jackets, the gold, smells the flowers, and tries on the shoes, and then it laughs the breeze, and it smiles a little, and it whirls once more about the room, and it flits back out of the open window and is gone with no plans to come again soon.